Hi, welcome back to Politics with Roger. It's Friday, September the 8th. Let's just dive right into the relevant stories of the week and analysis. So we finished last week talking a little bit about North Korea. Hurricane Harvey was wrapping up. Antifa was being denounced, and now we're into this week. So starting Monday, and the top stories of the week, North Korea was back in the news. There were stories coming out that they were testing hydrogen bombs and nuclear bombs and making all sorts of trouble. Towards the end of last week or in last week's show, I did speculate a little bit. There was a story about a missile being fired over Tokyo, and I had speculated that I wasn't entirely sure if that was really Kim Jong-un making all this trouble and making all these provocations because it seems that the noose is tightening around North Korea's neck. America has basically aligned with China, Russia, India, and a lot of the powers in that region to contain North Korea and to contain Kim Jong-un. When Kim Jong-un stood down, I guess this would now be 2-3 weeks ago, he was threatening a missile strike on Guam or a missile test on Guam. He stood down. To me, this signified that he was not suicidal, that he might be crazy to you and I, but he's not suicidal. He's not looking to get into a conflict that the North Koreans know that they cannot win, and they know that they cannot defeat the United States in a military conflict. It's in their own papers. So there's all this intrigue going around with North Korea, and I guess my thought on North Korea for the moment is, we seem to go through this cycle all the time. On Monday, the news cycle was very hot. It felt like, again, we were about 10 minutes away from war with North Korea, or that there would be some kind of conflict. Our president has said numerous times that nuclear war is an option in North Korea. And this just, it just hasn't been going on in the Trump administration. It's been going on for years. And it just seems like we're on the verge of war with North Korea all the time. And I got to tell my audience and my listeners here, I don't always know. It seems North Korea is a terrible place. Kim Jong-un is a horrible dictator. The people in North Korea are horrifically oppressed, probably the worst place in the world. And that's saying something. Right? How bad do you have to be the worst place in the world? Well, North Korea is probably it. China has propped up North Korea, not necessarily willingly. It's kind of, China takes advantage of the situation in North Korea to the best of China's ability. But at the end of the day, North Korea is a liability to China as well. So, a lot of babbling this right now about North Korea. I'm taking a long time to tell you guys. Not sure what's going to happen there. It does feel like this time that Kim Jong-un's days are numbered, and it feels like there's a lot of pressure from the international community to remove him. I guess that's the million-dollar question, is how to do this. The South Koreans would be the big losers, even in a successful removal of Kim Jong-un. It's very likely that Seoul would sustain just horrific damage in any kind of conflict, particularly one that goes nuclear. North Korea has, so much artillery and other kind of chemical and nuclear weapons pointed at South Korea, pointed at Seoul, just on the other side of the demilitarized zone. So I would say South Korea is probably the biggest advocate to preventing a war. Japan really doesn't want to see any kind of crazy war either. We know that the West would win. We know North Korea would fall. So anyway, North Korea, it's going to be an ongoing story. I suspect you'll see more stories about North Korea making provocations. I would still suggest, I'm not entirely sure if it is North Korea creating the provocations 100% of the time, maybe some of the time. I don't know. So North Korea is an ongoing story. At the beginning of the week, things were very hot. Towards the end of the week, things seem to cool down a lot. It doesn't even seem like a story today. Okay, moving on. The president, early in the week, repealed Obama's Dreamers Act, or DACA. I feel like this was a great move by the president. There's a lot of moving parts here, but the first and most important thing from my perspective was that this legislation was passed by executive order, not through Congress. So it was a healthy thing that it was repealed by executive order, or was repealed, whether it was repealed by executive order or Congress, doesn't matter. I think all laws that are not constitutionally passed through Congress should be repealed. Doesn't matter who signed the executive order. I know there's going to be exceptions to that when we start looking into it, but in general, we have a legislative branch. That's where laws are supposed to come from. So the Dreamers Act was repealed by the president. Then we get into the whole political battle about immigration, what's going to happen, and then of course we get into deportation, because that there are many children of immigrants, illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, whatever phrase you're using these days, that were brought to this country, and we don't know what's going to happen with them. I do not think this will signify any kind of phase where we go into deportation of the children of illegal immigrants. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, obviously, I'm not speaking for the president. The media right away tried to make that the issue, which, if you're the leftist media or if you're a leftist and you're thinking politically, that is what I would talk about. I would say, well, the president's getting prepared to mass deport a bunch of dreamers. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we saw the repeal of an unconstitutional law. I don't think we're going to see mass deportations anytime soon. People ask me what my immigration policy is, and I've always been one that started with a secure border first. And before we talk about anything else, I say we need a secure border, and I would say our border is not secure still to this day. I know that we've made great improvements, but I don't think we need to talk about deportation until we have a secure border, because it's irrelevant as long as the border is open. If the border were to become secure, or when the border becomes secure, I think we should focus on removing the jihadis out of the country first before anybody else. That would include any Syrian refugees, which I always said was a cover. They were not refugees anyway. But any jihadis, anyone with ties to terrorism, radical Islam, they would be removed first. After the border is secured, after we purge and deport the jihadis or anyone with ties to radical Islam, then we can move on to the felons and repeat offenders of our immigration policy and deport all of them. Once the jihadis and felons are deported after the border has been secure, then I think it's appropriate to have a conversation about what to do with the rest of the people. I think the political climate would change a lot once the borders were secure and everyone felt comfortable with that, once the jihadis were removed, and once the felons and repeat offenders were deported. I think people's attitudes about immigration and our borders would change a lot at that point. And I don't think we need to talk about deporting dreamers until we secure the border first, deport anyone with ties to radical Islam, and deport felons and repeat offenders of our immigration policy. So we'll see how this plays out. In the media, like I said, the leftist media is making this move out to be a precursor to mass deportation of dreamers. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. The Republican Party, I think the most interesting thing about this is the Republicans in Congress, in the House of Representatives. You would think they'd be cheering this. You'd think they'd be all over this. Well, I guess if you're way behind the curve, like many Never-Trumpers still are, you would think the Republicans would be happy about the repeal of DACA. But they're not, even though they've been the ones promising secure borders to their constituents for 15, 20, 25 years. So anyway, that's what's going on with DACA. We'll just move on. Also, a budget deal was hit this week. And you're seeing there's a lot of moving parts to this deal too. It was a package bill for aid for Irma, and in this bill, the Democrats slid in a permanent exemption to the debt ceiling, or in other words, we have no more debt ceiling, which is not a good thing. I mean, how are we not going to have a debt ceiling? And the president signed on to that. So what really gave it away for me, or when I see a story like this and I analyze a story like this, I hang back. Obviously, I didn't like the president's decision to remove the debt ceiling, so I'm thinking, what did we get? Sitting back and analyzing the situation, the first thing I notice is that the neocon media, the crony capitalist media, the former Republican establishment media, They went bananas. So right then and there, I kind of figured, okay, this is a good thing, because if they're upset, then that's good, because they are the swamp. The Republican Congress, the do-nothing Congress. And Pat Buchanan hit it this week also. I think what we're seeing, at least in the short term, I don't know if this is a long-term shift, but this is part of deal-making. You see the president going to the other side, crossing the aisle to pass the agenda that he wants to see passed. And if the Republicans don't want to repeal Obamacare, if the Republicans in Congress don't want to secure the border, if the Republicans don't want to sign a package aid to Irma, then the president's going to reach across the aisle to get those items passed. It doesn't mean he's permanently going to keep this alliance, but what I see here is a pivot by the president, and he's definitely going on offense against the Republican House of Representatives, the Republican Congress, who we the people, by the way, put into power, and they haven't fulfilled any of their promises, not since 2014, and they lied to us long time before 2014, before we ever gave them. They made so many promises. But anyway, I think you see the president now starting to put pressure on this Republican House of Representatives and Congress, and that's fine, and Senate, because Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell have been saboteurs, have been traitors, basically, to the nationalist movement, the Trump movement. We, the people, elected Donald Trump to pass a certain political agenda, and the people in our party, the Republican Party, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, have stood in direct opposition to that. So you are seeing a pivot. You did see the president reach across the aisle to make this budget deal, to eliminate the debt ceiling, to get aid to Irma, and the Republicans freaked out. The neocon media, the crony capitalist media, Conservative Review, Mark Levin, Fox News, a lot of the usual suspects freaked out. So I'm thinking it was a good thing. We'll see how things move forward. I'm not happy with the debt ceiling being permanently raised. So we'll have to see where that goes in the future. But that was the budget deal. Moving on, we better get moving here. We got, at the end of last week, Hurricane Harvey in Texas, and then coming up this week, Hurricane Irma in Florida. So just a quick summary. You've heard nothing about Hurricane Harvey this week in Texas.